1946's The Postman Always Rings Twice review and thoughts. Years ago, I got a problem. My feet, they itch for me to go places and buy really good movies, and that's how I got this one. So, yes, this is the penultimate entry in 2024's Noirvember, following my videos on the Maltese Falcon and Double Indemnity. And yeah, let's dive right into, I think, perhaps the first thing that needs to be addressed. Some claim that this is a ripoff of Double Indemnity, and I can somewhat see where they're coming from, and I do feel like there's a thing or two that almost had to be a deliberate reference, but it is sufficiently different. You know, the basic gist of, the protagonist is a man who meets a woman who's married, and they end up at least attempting to off her husband. Yeah, that's the same in both of them, but other than that, like, a lot of these noirs are very much about the characters, and the characters are completely different. Double Indemnity is about two people who are already very jaded and, not necessarily extremely young anymore. Like, that shouldn't matter, but sadly we do live in a very ageist society, where here, Frank and Cora are fairly optimistic and hopeful about the future, though for sure, like, there might be some frustration that things haven't gone at least slightly different way. And they're both young. I'm not 100% certain about the actors, but certainly I would say the characters must be like in their 20s, possibly even early 20s. And yeah, that I think is as much as I can say about that without spoiling anything. The cinematography is excellent, like other classic noir. Not the exact same, and there are less really awful people. Yeah, that's not a criticism. To be clear, I love all three of these movies. I'm comparing and contrasting, not criticizing so much the the Maltese Falcon alone, there's so many such scummy, terrible people, like, if those characters had been real and alive today, they would almost definitely, Trump would be trying to put them in government the second term, or they'd be hired by the Daily Wire or something. Like, the one thing is that, there's pretty heavy implication that they're, gay in the movie, and that would probably be the one thing that Trump and the Daily Wire people would not be okay with. Now, yeah, this one, it is more like just people with dreams and things, this idea that they have and how that affects things. And it actually, unlike the other two, it truly does come across as like a very genuine love between Frank and Cora. With the others, there's a sense that there's strong attraction. All three of these, the attraction between the male protagonist and at least one woman is quite strong. But here it really does feel like just this, perhaps not first love, but first great love kind of thing. They're really head over heels. They can't stop thinking about each other. and they want to be together, and that's part of where things go wrong. It's one of those, like, this has more than a little in common with, like, one of Shakespeare's tragic romances. Like, you know, this whole thing of star-crossed lovers. You know, there are things keeping them apart, but their love is true. It's not this, you know, perhaps more, yeah. And I really appreciate that they actually go with that. Like, a chunk of this is basically a romance, a tragic romance. And that does work really well with the noir aspect, because you know, film noir does not require that the major characters are jaded from the very start. You know, certainly things have to happen that make it clear this is a very dark, you know, yeah, very, very harsh world that they find themselves in. But yeah, here it actually, like, I won't give away exactly what happens, but yeah, the things that get to them usually largely happen in the movie itself rather than having happened before the movie starts. And yeah, so the actors are John Garfield and Lana Turner, and I'm not terribly familiar with them from other stuff, but they are fantastic here. And you know, yeah, their chemistry was in general, you know, very held in very high regard, and it really is, like, just they can't stop thinking about each other. And yeah, I think that might be about what I have that doesn't spoil anything. Yeah, as per usual, you know, amazing acting. The writing is fantastic. The plot is deeply compelling, and it's interesting. This one, there's not a boring second like the, you know, yeah, all three of these movies. There's not a boring second to be found in any of them, but because this one focuses so much on the romance, you know, it is slightly longer. It can feel like a slow burn early on, and then, you know, after a while, the plot starts moving as fast as it does in the other two. And the dialogue is still quite good. There's not quite as many memorable, quotable lines as the other two, especially as there were in Maltese Falcon. And, you know, this, I don't think that's a problem. It is something you see even just by, you know, looking it up on IMDb. Like, the memorable quote section is much shorter for this one than for those. Yeah, I think that does cover, yeah, so let's get into the spoilers, and I'm just gonna make sure so it is, there we go. And I think I will start with the, yeah, something big in the book, nowhere in the movie, is that Nick, the husband, is a Greek man. Now, I'd like to think that it's not in the movie because they thought he was racist against Greeks, but it's probably just that you weren't allowed to be in movies back then unless you were white. Like, that's an exaggeration, but yeah, like, there was significantly less diversity, which is part of why today you have people say, oh, but, you know, when I was younger, there were no, you know, everybody was white and cishet and male. No, that's just what you remember from movies. It was never, America for quite some time now has been very diverse, so it makes sense for their movies to be as well. But yeah, there's definitely an aspect of the book where it's these two white people who would rather murder a hardworking immigrant than be white people who have less than an immigrant who are at his mercy despite how nice he is, at least to Frank, and he thinks he's being a good husband to Cora. And yeah, before I proceed any further, I will say, obviously, murder is wrong. This is one of the noir stories that was originally written during the Great Depression, and as such, there were people, who were desperate and anything, willing to do just about anything, including murder, to survive. So basically, media was produced warning people away from that, saying it will go wrong eventually. By the time this movie came out, America was in a much better place. It was much easier to get a job than during the Depression. Anyway, so basically in the movie it boils down to Frank not being willing to be responsible and staying in one job. He keeps thinking that the next one will satisfy him more. Idle hands are the devil's playthings, as the saying goes. A lot of noir stories have femme fatales. It depends on the story just how cruel, vicious, and heartless she gets, if much at all. This is one of the ones that isn't extremely misogynistic a lot of the way. She genuinely means what she says to Frank. She does want him, or at least lust after him, the way he does for her, and she does want them to end up together. With that said, it is very misogynistically written how she suggests that he just let her drown. That's, yeah, like, holy crap. Men writing women. So Cora is first seen right after her lipstick rolls in front of Frank, and part of the thing going on there is she needs him to pick it up for her. She is someone... she needs someone other than Nick. It's not an accident that the sign in the window says man needed rather than just help needed. And the last thing we see of her right before the end of the movie, the lipstick yet again, the last thing we see, the lipstick yet again rolls to right in front of Frank. She needed him and he didn't protect her. And the first time the lipstick rolls, the camera shows off her figure, male gazy by the standards. Lipstick makes you think of the woman's lips, which was as erotic as they could go back then. I suppose if the movie was made today, it wouldn't be lipstick. It might be a birth control container or something. And I think that does bring us nicely to... I think it's... the movie definitely does still have some misogyny. But I do find it interesting that this, of the three of these, the femme fatale here is the most domestic, and I think that is why it's also the least misogynistic. Like, to be clear, I'm not saying that isn't also a misogynistic trope, but misogyny referring to how some of these women are written just, as terrible, terrible people. And here it's actually, no, she does genuinely love Frank like he loves her. And it really is just because it's the only way for them to be together that she even considers the murder. Where, and yeah, like near the end, there's some misogyny with, she says she's going to put, get Frank sent to the poison gas chamber, which is nowhere near as good a tourist destination as the laughing gas chamber. Seriously, I get what they're doing, but it's very evocative to include the word poison, but, like, people knew what a gas chamber was at the time. Like, you don't actually have to specify, like, that. Just, anyway. But and, you have the thing about her, like, screaming into the telephone, I don't want an ambulance, I want a doctor, when, it's like, well, an ambulance is going to get him in front of a doctor. And, she definitely does get berated more than Frank. Like, both of them screw up once, Sackett gets his hands on them after the murder, but yeah. But she's nowhere near as duplicitous and, like, some of these femme fatales are basically just, like, pure evil, And I do think that some of what they tried to do to make up for it is the fact that she has ambition, something that, Frank even calls out, like, which I've always found it fascinating how under, in America, when, under this, capitalist, but also moralist kind of system, sometimes if you're ambitious, I suppose it depends on the result. If you're ambitious and it works out, you're rewarded. You're thought of as just amazing. But if you don't succeed, or if you cross a certain line, but frankly, I mean, by today, where is that line even? Like, when you look at how many people have died as a direct result of some of the richest people in America just, choosing to work their workers too hard and, remove as many safety measures as at all possible. Like, I don't even know if there is a number that is high enough for, like, how many deaths you have to be responsible for if you're rich for there to be consequences. But yeah, she has ambition that Nick does not share, and I think that is definitely something where we're supposed to take it as, maybe at first we are meant to sympathize and think, oh, it's too bad they can't, but certainly by the end, we're meant to take it as, well, if she just lived in a way that wasn't to, if she accepted the way that things were, And I do definitely think that it has an interesting relationship, this movie, with circumstance, because it's quite clear none of the terrible things that happened over the course of the movie would have happened if not for the circumstance. Now, obviously, one of the counters to that is the fact that, if just these two young people would not, if they could just control themselves and not give in, because, young people, they haven't, they're not quite ready for adult society. They should be, but clearly they aren't yet. He keeps going from place to place, not being tied down. And yeah, she won't just accept the husband that the Lord has seen fit to provide her with, just, yeah, I think it's one of those movies that plays very different today. Today we definitely do feel like, the two of them, like, clearly are just, they what they want is not inherently wrong. It's just how far they're willing to go to get it. But the movie also makes clear that is the only way. She can't stand the hitchhiking lifestyle kind of thing, which, it bothers me when we say, oh, look at, her high heels, women and their shoes, kind of misogynist joke. And it's like, those shoes were, thought up and perpetuated by, like, people working under patriarchy. It's not that women just can't be sensible. It's patriarchy that demands that they always look amazing, and there's severe social consequences if they don't. Even if the picture that was taken of them was without their consent, they're punished for not looking amazing every second. And then you have male misogynists turn around and say, oh, makeup is the greatest lie in modern society. Well, you squeal like a pig when a woman isn't wearing makeup. Like, remember when Jordan Peterson absolutely lost it because he saw a woman on the cover of a magazine that he didn't think was sufficiently attractive? I mean, that wasn't even makeup, but, body type, just, like, who asked? Why do you feel the need to assure everyone in the world that you are not attracted to this woman? Like, now, I think that does pretty much cover. Yeah, the romance itself does definitely bear the marks of when it came out, you know, the on multiple occasions, Frank threatens to sock, you know, Cora. At one point, even like, you know, if you don't kiss me right now, I'll punch you. Which, like, and that was apparently romantic at the time, you know. Just, yeah. And on a non-zero number of occasions, he kisses her without getting clear consent first, and just, yeah. Let's see. I think, and we have this thing of, like, you know, she has to play hard to get, you know, even though she does feel very strongly for him from the start. She has to pretend, you know. You have the thing of, you know, you'll find nothing cheap around here, and just the, yeah, these various things where, and it's very amusing how Nick is so clueless. Like, you know, I don't know. I don't really feel like dancing. I'm not a good dancer. Cora, why don't you dance, you know, in front of Nick? I don't know about that. Oh, no, a better idea. Dance with Nick, you know. Let's put on, you know, what was like salsa music or something. Just like, and he's right there. He's just, yeah. I don't know exactly how much he initially paid for the Twin Oaks, but, you know, I figure a pretty substantial amount of money, and every single clue he had about the notion that maybe at some point Cora might be interested in another man. Let's see. There's a documentary on the DVD where, you know, a woman points out, you know, it seems like pretty unreal that Nick actually leaves, you know, Lana Turner alone with John Garfield for a while there. I don't have an awful lot more to say about the romantic scenes. I think they do a really great job with them, like the swimming, which, you know, of course, in noir style, by the end has turned very dark. You have this thing of her saying, you know, that she would accept it if he just let her drown, you know. And the let's see. Yeah, they do a really great job of showing, yeah, you know, when it's just these two together, when, you know, when they aren't suspecting the other of trying to put them both in the gas chamber, or at least the other one, yeah, you know, they can be really, really happy together. Like, she's clearly happier with Frank than with Nick. And I think that does just about. So, yeah, then we have the, let's see. Yeah, this is one of those things where I feel like if this was made today, I at least like to think it would be less ableist when we hear about, you know, Nick's sister and this thing of, like, because, like, basically the movie, they had decided that they weren't going to even try to off Nick again, and then they hear, oh, you know, she would be living in a, you know, in an unambitious town, and she would have to take care of Nick and Nick's sister, you know, until they, you know, are no longer with us. And yeah, that's really, really messed up. And sadly, there are a number of pieces of media from back then that do have this kind of element, you know. And I mean, I feel like it's too bad, because, like, you could have, like, I'm not even necessarily gonna say that, you know, I get where they're going with that sort of thing. I just feel like, you know, make it, if you really badly want to make it that she is determined not to have to spend a lot of time around someone, you know, specific, and there'll be, like, expectations. I mean, have it be that she would be working for just a really, really terrible person. someone who chooses evil rather than someone who, through no fault of their own, is disabled. Not that it, like, people who, if you aren't careful enough and you end up disabled, you obviously still deserve proper care. I think that does just about. Yeah, I really appreciate, again, an area where this is less misogynistic. Like, yeah, Nick can be fairly nice, but he does also make decisions that affect Cora's life forever that he doesn't even seem to think he should discuss with her. So we do have this element that part of what she really wants to get away from is the denial of consent. Because, like, the implication when Frank, forces a kiss on her or threatens to hit her if she doesn't kiss, that sort of thing, it's messed up, and I don't agree with it. I think we should get really, really far away from it as far as we can. But when he says those things, the implication is supposed to be that deep down she does want him to, and he's just being the man in the relationship, dominating and yeah. Whereas, like, Nick clearly, makes these decisions that she really doesn't want. She wants to keep working there. She doesn't want to go live in this other town and be taking care of Nick and his sister. Like, it doesn't even seem to really cross Nick's mind that he can't just demand that of his wife. He does really treat her like property. And let's see. I think that does just about. Yeah. The tension and suspense are excellent, surrounding, the one failed and the one successful murder attempts, and also, when they're almost, discovered because of, the guy working for, let's see, it wasn't Sackett, it was the other one, I forget his name, but yeah, I believe the character's name is Kennedy, who, walked so that James Gandolfini could run. R.I.P. And the thing with the stepladder and the cat, deader than a doornail. Okay, well, I best be off. I have to go see three spirits. And when he comes back, deader than a doornail. Remember? Well, I'm off to find a kid, ask him if it really is Christmas Day, and ask him to buy a massive Christmas turkey, I want to say it is. I don't really eat turkey during Christmas. I'm more of a duck person. Anyway, or possibly chicken. Anyway, not American. Yes, so them talking through, the plan with the marbles and, the let's see, you have the car itself, really, yeah, the just so much great stuff going on with the car. And I do think I'm slightly torn on how the movie handles drunk driving and car accidents in general, because, like, I don't know if we are just meant to think that, oh, well, I mean, it'll just happen because, like, laws were laxer back then. There were, like, I mean, really, cars being on the road had been a reality for significantly shorter, like automobiles, I mean, used to be like horse-drawn carriages, which I believe is why some cars are still referred to as, X amount of horsepower. But it's barely even remarked upon how Nick, like, keeps driving drunk. Like, you know, he almost gets in an accident when he comes back from the dry cleaners, and then, you know, they have to talk him into not driving, you know, letting Cora drive when they're, you know, on the night of the planned accident, the on purpose accident. And there at the end, I mean, it's not drunkenness, but yeah, like, he would have been fine if he just watched the road. He wasn't even texting. But yeah, I think I'll just very briefly talk about the very end. Yeah, you know, this thing of like finally, you know, they're back to happiness. You know, there'll be lots of kisses with dreams in them, and yeah, I don't know what he's even thinking, not watching the road, but you know, I think I don't think it's like bad writing. I think it is this thing of like, well, you know, when you're in love, you do foolish things, like not follow, you know, basic traffic law, but the yeah, you know, it's very nice because like right before the accident, you do realize, oh, this is gonna go bad, you know, because he doesn't just look away once; he looks away twice. It's just the second time he keeps looking away. So, you know, it's like a horror movie. We're practically sitting there, like, no, don't do that, you know, just shouting that at the screen. And yeah, the actual car accident, you know, very clever. This thing of like, oh yeah, the DA will be our witness, you know, this thing of like, you're drunk, you're a towel. And yeah, you know, Frank ends up in the back seat, and they drive, you know, there's the you know, let's go to this other road, I mean, this isn't the right road at all, and you know, we gotta was it like park the car because it was like overheating or something like that, you know, just very nicely building towards, you know. And it kind of amuses me. Like, I think it works, especially because it does eventually turn. But the funny element of the drunken singing, you know, which is also like they certainly do get about as many as they can jokes about Nick being drunk. Like they all, you know, when he comes back from the dry cleaner, you know, there's also this thing of like he's walking funny to get into the diner cafe thing, you know. And it does kind of, it is kind of funny to me that like every single time Nick suspects Frank of something, it's A, always wrong, B, never involves him being with Cora. Like I'm almost certain there's not a single time where he actually suspects that the two of them are together. He just keeps thinking, oh, Nick, after all I've done, Frank, after all I've done for you, you're just gonna up and leave, and you stole from me too, you know. And just yeah. Let's see. Then you have the the car accident. You know, them parking and there's a point where Nick's like stops singing and Frank's like, oh, come on, sing again, you know. And there's the echo, and then you know there's the shared look, and Frank picks up the bottle, which, you know, I feel like you know, there's some not poetic justice, but like irony there that, you know, yep, the bottle did end up killing him, you know, just not in the way that, because they keep saying, you know, I mean, if he keeps driving drunk, he's going to, well, that's the implication, you know, he does almost, you know, die when coming back from the dry cleaner. And let's see, you have the thing of but yeah, you know, he insists on continuing to sing, and he's like, oh, echo, which I feel like, you know, at that point there probably was like, you know, maybe both Cora and Frank were like, you know what, I'm really having second or third thoughts here. Do we really want to, oh, he's singing and getting an echo, okay, I'm 100% in, let's do this thing. And yeah, the fact that, you know, on account of like, let's see, I want to say, was it Hays Code around this time, or had that been, I can never remember the year, but you know, there were certain limitations on what you could show. So they don't show the actual death or the corpse afterward. Like, you don't get a good look at the face. You also don't see like the cat's head after it dies. You just see the body lying there, you know. But the implication is strong enough. You know, we understand because of the implication. And the let's see. Yeah, you know, this thing of like, oh, well, we gotta push the car over, and, you know, oh, it got stuck. We gotta push it one more time. And then Frank is inside, you know, and it falls down. And yeah, as the DA points out, you know, she was up here shouting for help before the car had even landed. You know, that was, yeah. And let's see, I think that does just about cover that. Yeah, I like how, you know, multiple times the cop comes back, and the DA really does, like, he like dips in and out, but he's there in the first scene and there in the last, and yeah, pops up every so often, and does suspect them from fairly early on. You know, he, yeah, deduces it pretty quickly. Right. At one point, the other lawyer is like, you know, I don't need 10 grand. I got 10 grand. Yeah, that is the least believable thing in this entire movie, that a rich person would turn down more money. Like, in real life, they're you know, yeah, trying to figure out, you know, well, if I exploit other people in this way, I might make at least a little bit more money. And the thing about, you know, he's like, well, you know, there really must be no evidence, because if the greatest detectives at this, you know, insurance company can't find out, I mean, yeah, you know, Key's little man must be absolutely furious. And let's see, the thing with the yeah, I really appreciate, you know, the thing of, you know, they underline on multiple occasions, you know, sadly sometimes they couple it up with Cora's attractiveness, as if, you know, that's the only value she has. She's clearly smart as well, and quite driven. Yeah, it's interesting. The ambition is said as negative. Like, the her conventional attractiveness is seen as like potentially corrupting, but ultimately, inherently, you know, there is some good in it. You know, where for Frank, it's the fact that he's smart. He's a good salesman. He can convince people of things and think his way out of situations and such. And you know, yeah, ultimately he thinks his way into a situation that both of them end up paying for. In the book, there's not actually any. Oh, right. It's a really strong adaptation. It's largely close. Like, there's a couple of things where you could do some stuff in writing that you could not do in a movie in America back then. So the book is a bit more direct about, you know, the affair. Although I can't claim that I understand. Like, there's a part where there's something about, like, Frank bites into her lips and the blood fills his mouth or something like that. He tastes her blood, something like that, and is like, I mean, I get it, yeah, because they couldn't. There was limits to how direct they could be in the book as well back then in writing, so that was what you ended up with, you know, pseudo vampirism. But let's see, the book does not explain the title of The Postman Always Rings Twice. That is, you know, I feel like that was probably the first thing that, you know, the moment that they were like, okay, we gotta turn this book into a movie. First thing first, what's the title supposed to mean? You know, because it is a good title. It's you know, it catches your attention. You know, but yeah, they had to explain it, and I do think they came up with a good explanation. I feel like it ties together, you know, very nicely, because it is true. Like, there were, you know, the thing about, you know, there were 2 times, like, he almost died in the car after killing Nick, and then he does die at the end in the poison gas chamber. And let's see, yeah, she dies in a car crash near the end. Ah, I can't believe I'm struggling to remember. I feel like there was at least one time where she did almost. I mean, maybe the fact that she was charged with murder, she would have. Yeah, if that hadn't been changed, then she would have ended up in the gas chamber herself. I think that does just about cover. And yeah, with Nick, there's 2 attempts on his life. The second one works, so yeah, I thought they did a good job there. And that, yeah, I really love the bet, the $100 bet, and the going back from, that's also, I feel like if this movie had been made in the 80s, that might have been a $1 bet. But yeah, the maneuvering to get her out of, both of them out of trouble, and then we find out, oh yeah, she's perfectly fine. They have nothing on her. They can't, so if it does get found out, no, she really did do it. Yeah, and yeah, Kennedy trying to blackmail was also a good. It is one of those things where, like, ultimately, technically you could have had that be like, it didn't strictly need to be in the movie, but it's maybe also one of those things where, like, she technically confesses twice. It's just that one of them ends up, they stop one of them, the other one ends up with Sackett. So yeah, I think that is the reason, and it's, there's some good scenes there, and also the fact that, when she's gone for a week, he finds Frank finds another woman, and accidentally leaves behind her wedding present to him, which, again, like, when we first see him with it, she points out, oh, it's like it's a noose around his neck or something, and yeah, so he gets rid of it as quickly as he can, and it ends up holding a different meaning. It is also amusing how, they wanted this element of, oh, she's pregnant, which of course heightens the tragedy. She was going to keep it, although I suppose back then there wouldn't necessarily have been, because, like, well, let's see, it wouldn't have been a legal abortion, I think, because Roe v. Wade wasn't around yet, and now it's been overturned, and probably will be a while before American women are protected again. But yeah, they want that element in there, but technically, this baby was conceived outside of wedlock because it was before they got married, and, well, back then they couldn't really imply sex, so they just, first she just says we, and then, they do end up saying the baby, but, like, yeah, they have to, like, tiptoe around it. Like, hypothetically, if you watch this movie as a child, you might not, it wouldn't actually clue you in at all on, how babies are made. You know, I mean, it's not like the movie's okay for kids to watch. There's murder and blackmail. But yeah, please don't get too, we can't have any of the, yeah, Puritanism, seriously. But I think that does just about, yeah, I quite appreciate that, yeah, the DA and the other guy, they don't really care that much about justice. Like, it just is a game to them. Does a killer go free or not? Eh. And we have the element of, even back then, the American public would turn infamy into fame. You had people actually being like, oh, can I have your autograph? I forget if that happened in real life, but there was a culture around, yeah, being fascinated with these people rather than just avoiding them altogether. They even, like, they come right out and say that's part of why the place has been doing such good business recently. Everyone wants to meet her and have her autograph and these things. And yeah, I think that does just about cover it. Right. At one point, when Kennedy comes in, they talk about, oh, private detective, although they don't exactly use that word, which, like, they say, I know a dick when I see one. Through the clothes, though? Are they transvestigating Kennedy?